Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Salty Seaman Show podcast. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to talk about something other than news. We're going to be talking about, I don't know if you would call it regrets, as much as taking the high road. How often have you done what other people in your life say, you did it right, you did the right thing, but later in life it eats at you, you know what I mean? You just have a certain feeling that that person got the upper hand on you and there's more that should have been said and you almost regret that. Like there's things in life where you regret not saying things to loved ones and stuff like that when they pass, but there's just as many things in my life where I've been looking back on it, been like, I should have said that, you know, in a negative situation. Like you get in an argument with somebody and they really tell you off and you just for the sake of keeping the peace, you keep your peace and you lug that damage off for like your whole life. And then you fight that in your head. So is doing the right thing always doing the right thing for yourself?
Well, the word that comes to mind is validation. And a lot of times when in a moment with somebody, I guess it's a tool that I learned was validation. Somebody wants to be validated in a conversation. And sometimes that can be a tool to like maturely get through a conversation. The problem with that is
like that their point of view means something.
Yeah, I mean, don't you want to be validated?
Well, you want to think that when you're having a conversation or you're trying to get your point across, you want someone to at least hear you as opposed to shutting you down type of a thing, you know?
Yeah, I think if you can sit down, I think to have a conversation with two adults, if you can sit down and listen maturely, no matter your feelings. I think that's a hard thing, is the anger and the resentment that may have built up in that conversation, or years have gone by.
Yes.
Where you didn't talk or you just were at odds with each other. But I think for me, like one of the situations that I think of when you introduce it that way is I had a family member and there was a misunderstanding between the family member and I. And I had said something out of irritation in a room. Which happens. And that family member took it really personally and like came up to me and just completely exploded on me. And
the sad thing about that, just if I could put this in there, is why is it that we as humans tend to explode on the ones that we love the most?
Because we feel safe to do that they're not going anywhere.
They're not going to attack, like literally haul off and punch you in the face.
But it's not okay.
Like perfect strangers half the time wouldn't treat other strangers the way that they treat their loved ones, which is such a shame. But you're right. There's a safety net there where you feel like, oh, they're friggin' stuck with me. I can't believe you do this. You know, and on their side of it, they feel like doubly hurt probably. So they feel like exploding, like it's just emotionally. And maybe it also could be in a scenario like that they had a long line of shit that they've been dealing with and you basically caught it. You know what I mean? They exploded from 5 years of just eating crap from other people and you were the safe person that they felt like they could just let it all go on, and you caught 5 years of bullshit over something that didn't amount to a piss hole in a snowbank.
Correct.
Right.
But when, you know, things had kind of a couple years had gone by and there's just major odds in the family, another family member asked me if I would go make the peace.
Yep.
And so this is kind of what we're talking about, is doing the peacemaker, doing the right thing.
Being above such things.
Right. For some reason, people look at me like I have it in me to be the peacemaker.
It takes a lot out of a person to take that high road.
But years of doing that, years of putting things aside, actually makes you a pretty resentful person.
It can build up.
And the grief comes in, which is what I was talking about yesterday, because grief is an emotion that's just something that's not dealt with. Well, long story short, I sat down with that person and they wanted me to apologize for something that I didn't do.
Yeah.
And you know what I did? I apologized to keep the peace.
for something that you
the high
didn't
road.
for something that you didn't
No.
even do.
No.
See, I don't know if that's healthy.
It's not healthy.
I really don't think that. I mean, I don't think a person should ever apologize for something they didn't do. I think that you should fight to the bitter end that you're innocent of something that you did not do. I would never. I think that would eat at you, which it has.
On the flip side of that, if you go around just saying how you feel and like just ripping everybody up over every emotion, you then become such an angry person
Yes.
inside that it makes you physically sick.
It goes.
know?
I think that both ends of that spectrum can go too far. Like, I think going too far to the degree of literally apologizing to somebody for something that you did not do just to keep family peace is, you're taking on this damage all on yourself. They now feel like justified and validated. I guess I won and showed her. Not that anybody wins in those scenarios, but you literally take a beating for something that didn't go down the way that it should. Now, the other side of that spectrum, I've seen this in my family, where you could be so unhinged and so angry that it can just completely destroy you inside. Going around telling everybody how you feel all the time, first off, nobody gives a shit how you feel. So you just kind of become like this negative version of yourself that nobody wants to see coming. Because now you're just blowing off steam every time you turn around, blowing somebody's doors off. I think there's a balance there where you don't eat shit and you stand up for yourself, but you don't have to be a negative, mean, ugly bug all the time. So you have to stick up for yourself. So keeping the peace is one thing, but there's something about that when any time that I've ever been in a scenario where after the altercation, whether it be verbal or physical or whatever, every time that happened and somebody looked at me and said, you handled that right, you did the right thing, I every time regret it. For whatever reason that is, there's something about that I feel like that's a cop-out. Like, I feel like they're just saying, you know what, you were a pussy, but you didn't get in a fight. That's how it feels. And I regret it afterwards because I replay every one of those scenarios where somebody afterwards said, you kept your cool, you did the right thing. I replay those instances over in my head for years. I can't help it. It just happens. It comes back to I should have said this to them and I should have dealt with it. And that's honestly, the real question in that, is that an ego problem on my part? Because technically I did probably do the right thing. I didn't get in a fist fight, or something like that over something that was stupid. But there's part of me that you feel like that person or that group got the upper hand. Like, you feel like somehow they got one over on you. So in a sense, if you think about it, I mean, we're just having a conversation here about, we're not, psychologists or anything like that. We're just having a conversation. But is that an ego thing?
Well, this is the other thing that comes to my mind is I get all of that, but I think the other problem with, and this may answer your question of whether this is ego or not, you take someone like me, and I know several times that you've said to me, just, babe, don't let it get you upset, and just kind of smooth it over. And the reason you're doing that is because you don't want me to change my personality, but you're protecting me.
I'm protecting
from not saying how I feel, and
Yes.
I can say how I feel, and anybody can do that in a way of.
You know what it is? What it amounts to is, I know the damage that I've done to myself over the years by getting ugly about stuff, and I know how that, honestly, I feel like it darkens your soul to a degree. And you are just such not to get gushy or anything, but I think you're just such a beautiful soul that I hate to see it when you get real mad and you want to go after somebody. But it's not fair to take that away from you, because we all have those emotions when we feel slighted, when we feel hurt. Over the years, I've been the first to try to calm you down and try to get you to not, go on the offensive, because I don't want to just add fuel to a fire type of a thing. There's been family scenarios where I've been into it with your family, and you never got your say because I wouldn't let you. I was like, just let it go. Just don't.
that's, like, awesome.
I'll lug it off, like that type of a thing. But
it's really awesome that you would do that. But the thing is last night I was sitting on the couch and there was a song that popped up, and it was basically a reflection of 20 years. And emotionally, I was like emotional because I think I'm like, I'm really happy with where my life is. But the problem is there's still some resentment inside of me. There's still the things that are left unsaid and different.
Yeah.
And I made a post about it yesterday. It was like the feeling sometimes, if you're feeling like you are feeling a little depressed. I know enough about emotions in the body and how they're stored and how they can come out. And if you don't say, now most people don't know this about us or me because we don't blast it everywhere. We keep things very quiet. But I think if I was able to say how I felt more in the situation, I think I would be more emotionally balanced now. Mm-hmm. Because
then you wouldn't.
I look at a person and I'm still angry at them.
Yep.
Because
and they don't even know it.
They don't even know it.
Right.
And I think.
But that's the problem with anger is that, we've all heard this saying before, but it is so true. It's like the hatred of somebody else is like drinking poison, that you have in store for them, but you drink it yourself, to that effect. And it really is true, because when you harbor bitterness and hatred towards someone else, 9 times out of 10, they're just living their life. They don't even know it. You know what I mean? Except for the people that I don't like. They know it. I make sure they know it. You know what I mean? But there's only like a couple of them. Like I got like maybe 2 people that I really, 3 people that I really don't like. But I just stay clear of them. Like I just don't have anything to do with them anymore. But the flip side of that is what you're going back to is you've got things unsaid. Mm-hmm. So the beginning conversation that we had, is it better off sometimes to take the high road? I don't know that it is.
I don't know.
I think that you should speak your piece, whether they hear it or not. You should defend yourself, whether it's a physical attack or a verbal attack. You should not avoid confrontation, because I think when people tell you you did the right thing, they're saying you were a pussy. I think you should have said something.
The thing is, though, is you're going to have so many people that are just like, well, you just got to let that stuff go. And you know what?
It's easier said than done.
If people can do that, then that's amazing. But it's not fair to say to somebody, that happened years ago. You got to let that go. You can't.
It didn't happen to them.
No.
It didn't happen to them. That's the thing. So it's very easy to walk around on your high horse saying that you got to let that go. Well, geez, Jeff, Fred didn't friggin' tell you were a stupid asshole, did he? You know what I mean? It's
Here's the other thing, though. Like, I've had situations where
Fred didn't do anything to me, by the way. It wasn't Fred.
And I'm not going to get into too much detail right now, but close people in my life that were passing, and I went to visit with them, a friend, or let's just put it to you that way, and they're not here anymore. And it meant a lot to me to go and talk with them.
Closure.
And then things were said in those conversations that why couldn't they have been said throughout the last 10 years?
Because people wait.
Why couldn't those conversations have happened like so many times? If you can sit down with somebody and be like, look, I'd like to talk to you. There's some stuff that's bugging me. Could we talk it out?
Right.
How come those things can't just happen more than someone getting upset? Now, it depends on the type of person they are. And then, again, it's like I always say to you, I joke, I'm like, if I was dying, I wouldn't tell anybody. The only person I would tell is you.
Right.
Because don't come out of the woodwork from 20 years ago and be like, geez, I'm sorry we didn't work things out. Like, my voice to everybody is like, well, the whole part of grief is just love that was never said. If you love somebody, don't like go on. Like, if it's a family member, like, love them and figure it out. Don't like wait years and years. I know for myself, I just have tons of stuff that's just unsaid.
The problem is when we're healthy, we're just running about our business, doing our thing, thinking that this friggin' train ride is going to go on forever. And there is an end of the line for everyone. And I think we all need to be making our peace as we go through life. Don't wait. Like, to your point, like, if I knew I was going to go, I would actually not tell people I was going to croak, but I would actually go on my own. If I had anybody that I felt like I needed to make peace with, I would probably just go make peace without them knowing. And if it stuck, good. Because if it stuck, then it would be genuine. As opposed to, I'm dying, and then they're going to just forgive you of everything because you're dying. You know what I mean? It's just like the asshole that dies. You know what I mean? He was an asshole his entire life, all the way through, right to the bitter end. And when he dies, everybody's just making up stories. They're digging as deep as they can in their memory banks to come up with one story that's nice that this bastard did. Meanwhile, he was abusive. He was a dank. All these things. I've been to funerals like that. I'm like, who the fuck is this guy they're talking about? You know what I mean? It's like, what the hell? How does he get a pass? So I would rather have it be a scenario where the forgiveness is genuine and nobody knew about it, type of a thing. You know what I mean?
Well, forgiveness is the thing I told. So we recently had a situation, we're not going to say details, but we recently had a situation within the last year where you and I took the high road.
Yes.
And something surfaced yesterday.
It wasn't even the high road, I wouldn't say.
Gracefully.
We were part of a group of people, like friends, you would say, and we just kind of quietly backed out and didn't say anything. We were asked by a couple of people in this group of friends and stuff of why we hadn't been around for a while, and I was just honest, but it wasn't mean. It was just like, I just don't agree with a couple of things. And man, oh man, it was like you shit on somebody's salad type of a thing, and we never said anything. So sometimes you can try to take the high road, and I guess that's the thing. There's things that you should say, and there's times that you shouldn't say things. But after a while, it's like you need to stand up for yourself a little bit.
I agree with that. And I think because if you don't, you'll continue to see things that will bug you. But again, I will take accountability, and I know that forgiveness is something that I struggle with a lot.
Yeah.
It is probably, everyone has like their fears,
everybody's got their thing they struggle with.
Their sin, and forgiveness is very challenging for me. But I think the reason for that is the whole conversation that we're having right now. Is because I probably wasn't able to express how I felt.
So I can speak from personal experience if we backtrack just a little bit. When we were talking a minute ago about every time that somebody said that you did the right thing, in my mind, I replay those scenarios with regret. On the flip side of that coin, the times that I did not behave myself, and I looked at that person right square in the eyes, and I told them just exactly what they did wrong, how they did it wrong, whether they accepted that or not, I never once replay those scenarios in my mind with an ounce of regret. So I think that the key to the whole thing is not necessarily taking the high road, but I think that if you're in a scenario and somebody afterwards comes up to you and says you did the right thing, you've lost, is what they're saying. And not that you're trying to win, but I think in scenarios when you've got confrontation, when somebody is maybe slandering you, I don't think you should be quiet. I think that the key to this whole story is that you should go either to that group or go to that individual and say, this is where I feel wronged, you've done this, and be very just point of fact, because nobody likes confrontation, but I think it eats you up inside if you don't have that confrontation with that person. I think you will carry that poison in your system for your entire life. And I'm not saying blow up and be mean. I'm just saying there's something about the confrontation. Nobody wants confrontation. But 9 times out of 10, when you confront somebody, they usually like settle right the frig down. And I'm not talking like text message and shit like that. Face to face, person to person, and I think it's a healthier way to be. So I robbed you years past from being able to settle things that you probably would have settled if you'd gone and taken care of it yourself. You know what I mean? And that goes back to
I don't think the situation would have gone as far if I was able to, because
probably not.
And I appreciate you protecting me,
But it's the wrong thing to do. I think it is.
I think because you end up you keep saying like, man, you want to hit that, and I'm not speaking for myself necessarily right now, but I have a lot of friends that are like, they're just not where they should be on a content level.
Right.
And it's a lot of times something that's built up inside that you don't always know what it is. But
well, everybody's walking through life with hurt or damage of some kind, and everybody thinks that theirs is more painful than the person next to them. And I mean, I have heard this statement before, and it really is true. The worst thing that has ever happened to you is the worst thing that's ever happened to you. So that's your experience. The worst scenario, like, you know, some people were like, have been physically abused by family members. Never had that. But for us, we've had family members that have done sneaky, underhanded things. You know, and that just, it happens. You know what I mean? I've had arguments and I've had times where I didn't talk to my sister for 6 months. You know what I mean? But you work it out. But those are, like, to me, if that's the worst thing that ever happened to me, and that if I say didn't square with that, I'm going to lug that off my whole life because that's the worst thing that ever happened in my family. You know what I mean? So it's like, you can't take that away from somebody, you know? But the key is honestly sucking it up and doing the hard thing, which is confrontation. Because the lack of confrontation, I think, leads to those scenarios in our head where we're constantly replaying those pain points, those things that we didn't say, the points that we didn't make. So kindly, lovingly, and respectfully, but firmly, lay all your cards on the table with
something.
something.
Boundary. And that's something I've lacked a lot in my life, is boundaries. And I had a friend tell me that it was like last year, and she's like, this is my year of boundaries, and it really stuck with me. Listen, I'm not a selfish person, and I see a lot of people walking around or blasting that, you know, love yourself and only think of yourself, and that's just not true. Life is about relationships.
Yes.
It's about enjoying
the whole loving oneself thing is it's a selfish movement.
I took a self-love course.
Yeah.
I mean,
I've been practicing self-love since I was like 12 years old.
oh
Sorry,
boy.
sorry.
No, it's okay. I
mean, it was right there. How could I not? And that's what I said at 12 years old. I'm like, it's right there. How could I not, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway.
I think that's about, you know, the end of the topic, but I had something I was going to go with, but I think your self-love.
My self-love.
Made me forget about it.
I ruined your self-love class.
No.
Is that what they taught at self-love class?
No.
I don't need a class. I could teach the class.
Yeah. I just think that everybody's situation is different, and I'm not discrediting a terrible trauma that somebody has had.
Absolutely
sometimes
not.
You can't confront something, and it's not like you should just go around right now and go back 30 years backlog and start confronting people. It's just going forward. You have to know when. I feel like it's like know when to hold him and know when to fold him. It's like, when can you just be like, I'm just going to let this one slide?
If you can look into the future and say, this is something that's going to irk me, for the next 10 years, you probably ought to say something about it. You know what I mean? Whether it be to that person's face or just putting your side of the story out there, you know? I mean, because there's certain scenarios and situations in our life that I'm friggin' sick of talking about. Like, you and I have been talking about one certain subject over and over again for the last, like, 10 months.
We made a pact yesterday.
We made a pact yesterday to never talk about it again. I mean, because we're mildly talking about it. But that's
I think it warranted this conversation.
Well, it did. It brought this conversation on. But that's how this stuff can affect a person. You could be in a scenario where you take the high road, bow out gracefully, and then they attack you. And you're like, whoa, I didn't say anything publicly. I didn't do anything. And you're literally bringing me into your world as an example of somebody that's bad, somebody that's doing the wrong thing. And I'm like, yo, I never said a word. Like, I could run around to every single person. I could have run around to every single person in this situation and told them an earful, but I didn't. So that's the stuff that, you know, you lug that off. And it's just, but it's not, that's one of those, that's not worth it. You know what I mean? There are certain things that are not worth arguing over, not worth fighting over, and you do have to let certain things go.
Right.
But certain hurts, when you're in it, my suggestion is let them have it boldly with both barrels. Tell them just exactly what you think. Don't be rotten. Don't be nasty about it. But talk to somebody in a situation and you tell them what they're doing wrong, because you will lug it off the rest of your life if you don't. Right?
Yeah, I mean,
Agreed.
I agree completely.
All right, guys. And with that, this is our little short episode of the Salty Seaman podcast. We love you and God bless.